Altus Group's software, data, and advisory services help bring the clarity, perspective, and insights you need to minimize the risk and maximize the value of your investments. Because it's not simply how much data you have, it's how clearly you see it.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Realcomm Live. Got a great show in store. If I'm going to choose one word to describe today's conversation, it will be foundational. All right. So, if you want to talk about smart, connected buildings, districts, cities, campuses, portfolios, you have to start somewhere, just like in a building, right? And if you're going to build a 30, 40-story building, the foundation better be well figured out, better be strong, better be deep, better be wide, better be engineered correctly to hold the weight of that building ahead of, on top of it. So what we're going to talk about today is, where do you jump, or how do you jump into the smart building conversation if it's something that's new to you, which is probably new to about 90% of the commercial corporate real estate facilities world. When you get into these complex capabilities of a smart building, only a small percentage of the industry still fully understands what they are, and it's evolving every day. But what is a smart building? Is it a wireless infrastructure? Yes. Is it access control? Yes. Is it lighting? Yes. Parking garages, bathrooms? Yes, yes, yes. It's a bunch of stuff. Okay. And it's been evolving for 25 years. And so a while back, we decided to allow folks an opportunity to jump in at the very beginning. Hence the Intelligent Buildings Bootcamp. Some places, or a place where people can come and start from the very beginning and understand what it takes to develop a strategy, to implement a smart building strategy, both from a technology and from a business perspective. Couldn't have two better folks to talk about it today than Rob Murchison, co-founder of Intelligent Buildings, and Andy Schonberger, VP of Client Services, also from Intelligent Buildings. So let's bring these guys on and get this conversation started. Gentlemen, how are you?
Doing good, Jim. How are you?
Good.
I am good. Always good. Shouldn't be this good, I guess. First of all, thank you for taking the time. I know what your schedules look like, but a very important topic, we have all been collectively, or at least Rob, you and I, probably 20 years working on this topic, kind of side by side, different organizations, but, on the journey together. And it's come a long way, right? The technology is evolving at a pace I've never seen before, especially during the pandemic, things like AI and robotics and all these new things. When you thought it might have been sleeping, no, it's coming out of the chute fast and furious. But my point is that the technology is changing pretty quick, and sometimes it's overwhelming for people to jump in. So that's the conversation we're going to have today, which is the boot camp. But before we get to that, we'll start with Rob, give a little background so people have context, as to your experience and skills as it relates to this conversation.
Sure. Well, I like to joke around. Hey, folks, Rob Murchison, co-founder, Intelligent Buildings, and I like to joke around that me and my business partner Tom, we're not engineers. That being said, I think that's part of what makes us a little bit unique. And Andy introduces himself in a second. You'll see we got a lot of smart people and engineers on our team. But I think what is important as we go through this conversation today is that there's a thread of all this technology. And Jim, you and I are talking about before on the prep for this. It's gone from just a few choices to an overwhelming number of choices, and you'll see it out on the floor at your show. But you got to be able to match that to the outcomes that you're trying to achieve. And I think as we talk through this, if you're a newbie, and we'll say this several times, IB Bootcamp is just a must. But Andy, why don't you introduce yourself, and then we jump into it.
Hi, everyone. I'm Andy, and I'm a recovering facility manager. I am an engineer, as Rob just stated. I've played with a lot of the toys and tools and had bright, shiny object syndrome, and just wanted to play with the latest and greatest thing in buildings and in all over my career. So I've learned a lot of lessons about getting the basic principles right. Spent some time at Cisco playing with networks. Been at IB for 6 years now, really trying to help our clients learn those basic principles. And Jim, to your point, get that foundation in place before making the mistakes I made in previous efforts.
Well, and Rob, you joke you're not an engineer, but as I mentioned in the green room, I do remember 20 years ago you geeking out over the fact that you were driving music that used to play in the elevators and those speakers with analog disparate cables to a Muzak box someplace in the building. You were determined to get it run over IP, which you eventually did. And that was 20 years ago, right? So maybe not an engineer, but certainly a geek, which is important, right? I mean, and to your point, Andy, about the shiny new object, we're going to talk a little bit about that. I think that the era of shiny new object is over. I think FOMO is, we're going to put a fork in fear of missing out. I think the struggles that our industry and tech is experiencing right now are going to result in a new paradigm of I got to do this because I got to do it. It's going to get more serious, more mature. The idea of just looking for the shiny new object, we all had that in our careers, but like you said, Rob, if there's not a business driver, none of this stuff makes any sense. So let's when we first conceived, Rob, and it's been a while, right? Of the boot camp, do you remember what our goals and objectives were?
Yeah, I would say it was pretty simple, right? We wanted to provide a forum to teach folks who were either starting the journey or were somewhere on the journey to either making a building or a portfolio of buildings smarter in a purposeful way. And
Right.
so what we did as an organization, sort of teaming with you guys to give back, is we took a lot of the content that we would use in our workshops to educate our customers, and we incorporated into the boot camp in order to help accelerate the journey for as many folks as we could.
Andy, I mean, you weren't there in the beginning, but I mean, from looking back, does that still hold true today?
Very much so. We're trying. I've been doing the boot camp now for 6 years myself. So while I don't go back the full 11, but I still been here the majority of the time. The basic principle is the same. We're trying to provide an on-ramp to folks to get up to highway speed as quick as possible on this topic, because the buzzwords are flying around like crazy, depending on the prop tech, topic du jour, or what people are saying based on great advertising from, some of the folks that are providing point solutions. So we really want them to be able to get up to speed as quick as possible, maybe bring new staff in who are trying to get up to speed on a program really rapidly, help them get, the basic principles, the terminology, maybe sort out some of the buzzwords and fluff from the absolute bedrock basic principles, laying some bricks and getting some networks in place and those sorts of concepts. And then also talking about the challenges in the industry. So all of these things aren't changing. As you know, we all know our industry isn't the fastest to move. So a lot of these basic principles have held true for some time. So we want to get those folks up to speed as quick as possible, so they get the most out of all the rest of is offered by Realcomm.
And Rob, I think we concluded that we've been doing this 11 years, right?
Yep.
Does that sound
The
right?
boot camp, sort
boot
of
camp,
halfway through the journey of our existence, but yes.
Yeah, ours. Well, we're celebrating our 25th year, so the boot camp's been almost 50% of that time as well. And some people could say, "Oh, you guys are stale. You're doing the same thing over and over again." It's like, I think that it gives credibility to the fact that we've been so consistent and we've maintained a position on what it takes to get people into this conversation. Now, has the content changed? Yeah. I mean, go ahead.
I would definitely say that the content gets refreshed every year. I just scream an example here, right? 3 years ago, did anyone know what ESG was?
Yes and no. Well, the mainstream did not. We have actually had a sustainability forum come and go in the last 10, 15 years. It peaked and it dropped. So a small percentage of people did, but the general public did not. No.
They did it, and now we're in a time of flux with commercial real estate, commercial building owners specifically, where that it's on everybody's radar, right?
Yep.
So we have to be able to take the capabilities that smart building technology can provide and map it to the outcomes that are needed to take place, in a rising interest rate environment, which really causes us to focus on what is going to have the biggest impact, and where hard costs are a really, really big deal. So
Well,
the content's maturing.
Well, and I'll give another example. How long have we been talking about a singular network in a building to be the foundation of the smart building? But we have to deal with, building networks. We have to deal with, 5 phone networks, Wi-Fi networks. I've spent the last 4 months every Friday or every other Friday an hour talking about the complicated nature of in-building wireless right now. Right now, if you're a building owner, you got to put in 3: your CBRS, okay, your DAS, and your Wi-Fi, okay, as well as maybe a couple other little ones. The building owners don't want 3; they want 1, right? And we are on a convergence right now. So that topic, while it won't go deep in the boot camp, you'll touch on it, right? And then of course we've got different events throughout the conference that will go deep into that topic, right? So if you hear a little bit about in-building wireless networks in the boot camp, there'll be plenty for you to go to during the next, the rest of the conference to dig in a little deeper if you so choose to do so. So, but yeah, I mean, we're constantly working with you guys to refresh that forum. So, all right, so let's talk about high level. What are some of the things, and Andy, we'll start with you. What are some of the things that you're going to learn? Some specific bullet points. What are the topics other than the ones that, we just mentioned? Will you go over?
Yeah, we're asking for quite a bit of time of folks to sit down and go through quite a bit of content, pretty rapid fire style. So we've kind of broken it down into 3 big categories. So first is the basics. It's about the networks. It's about availability of data. It's about security of these building systems. And it's about, getting that data normalized and flowing. Those basic principles, they can get a little techie at points, but making sure that we've got those foundational attributes we cover. We want to make sure that we talk about the use cases and capabilities instead of point solutions and pieces of technology or a network protocol or things like that. So we get into using that over talking about systems and features right away. And in this first basics section, we get an alumni story. We get someone who we've brought along the journey over this last decade, saying how these foundational principles helped them. So that's generally the first section. Then we get into some of the more topic du jour, the technology, the big data, or maybe market scoring, or something about carbon regulation. Or
are you going to get into ChatGPT for smart buildings?
Yeah, listen, AI is topical. We want to make sure we capture people's attention with what brought them, into the fold. While still grounding it in the basics, not going straight to advanced level details about the natural language algorithms that ChatGPT is using. Let's make sure we get to basic principles. That's the common thread we're pulling here.
Yep.
And usually, so after that, kind of deep dive into the tech, where we're modifying the content to make sure that we're hitting some of the things people are most interested in. Then we get into the back end of it, which is more the people, the organizational, the change elements, the challenges.
The most important, in my opinion.
Yeah, and then give them a send off with a bit of the value proposition of how to go about navigating the trade show floor, or selecting a stream to go and dig into, in the rest of the conference, or the rest of the content we're able to help with in this whole industry. So we've tried to keep that theme and structure consistent. And then what we're doing is we're bringing in, leaders in industry. We're bringing in folks that can do a 15-minute deep dive, like John Petsy on analytics has helped us so many times over the years. And we wish him the best in his retirement now. So we're going to have to find somebody else to fill that slot.
We're going to pull him back.
Maybe we'll bring him in. Yeah, it's Vegas. That might be attractive to him. But yeah, that consistent structure, I think, is important, because then we're not reinventing the wheel of how this works. We know this format works.
So I've been talking to so many organizations that are finally realizing that they're woefully behind in fundamentally understanding how complex this is, but all the benefits that come. Is that boot camp suited for a property manager, facility manager, director of real estate, asset manager? Is it so technical that they'll get lost, or do you discuss enough of the business principles to make it interesting for somebody who might, have to hire people to do this job of making an intelligent building?
Yeah, our goal is to translate all this into plain English, business language. Now, in some of the topics, sure, we may get into a little bit of the cybersecurity elements. We may get into a little bit of technical content, but overall, this is an introduction. This is that on-ramp, right? So we don't want to throw someone into the far left lane right off the bat and tell them to push the pedal down. We don't want to lose them. So It's a good balance of both is the intent.
And it also just so we folks understand the nest, the net, if you will, that we're casting. It's just not for commercial building owners that own buildings for profit. This is for commercial building owners like institutions and
corporate
healthcare
end users,
systems.
tenants.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So it's a very if you own a commercial building and you're in this ecosystem and you want to start the journey or you're on the journey, this is where you get started.
Well, and in this boot camp, you have had major universities, you've had major Fortune 25 corporations, you've had commercial owners, you've had hospitals. I mean, we run the gamut of people who find value in this. So just to be clear, an asset manager, West Coast, with a multi-billion-dollar portfolio, maybe not as technical as us, value for them to come?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We've got examples, Jim, of, SVPs of global real estate coming to this session and finding a ton of value. We've got examples of chief engineers from REITs who are trying to get their heads wrapped around how to scale some of these solutions and their team, in a particular campus participating.
And should anybody feel apprehensive, embarrassed for asking really basic questions?
Absolutely not. No.
This is the place.
Intent.
This is the place
where
you can say, I've been running a real estate portfolio or buildings for my entire career, dabbled with technology. This is new to me. Okay to leave that at the door, come in and ask any question you want.
Absolutely. And Jim, we even have it come the other way with extremely technical people who struggle with simplifying the message to be able to add more value from their service, come in the other way. So they might be a complete expert on in-building wireless and they struggle with the value proposition. How do I position this to a client? Because they are so deep in the technical weeds, they struggle to pull back up to the 30,000 foot level.
Yep. So Rob, before we take a break, can you drop some notable names, not individuals, but organizations that have come through your doors that ended up being pretty sophisticated in the intelligent building journey at a pretty quick pace? Can you throw a couple names at us?
Sure. Warner Media, the General Services Administration, Epic Properties, COT, Microsoft. I mean, a lot of the folks that started the journey. I mean, we've been doing this for 12 years. They got inspiration from this boot camp, and it's not about us. It's about all the folks that attend that connect with each other.
Yep, it's the community that's formed, and that's another point I would like to make. Usually commercial corporate real estate is pretty competitive, but I have never seen such camaraderie, people wanting and willing to help each other. And I don't care, you're a Fortune 5 company, you come down and you admit that I don't know what I'm doing. People will just swarm around you and guide you on that journey, and those relationships that last as people go through this journey. And this journey is not easy. I'd say, a lot of them started in the boot camp.
They did. And just one other thing to add, this is not just about office. This is about retail. This is about life sciences, industrial. I mean, if you're commercial stadiums,
you've had stadiums in there. Yeah.
Commercial buildings.
I wouldn't say, well, commercial, sometimes people think just office. Let's just say the built environment. Anything with 4 walls, a ceiling, with the exception of residential. We don't deal with houses, but a multifamily. I mean, some of the topics that we deal with are absolutely appropriate for a large residential multifamily complex. So very good point. Very good point. All right, let's take a brief break. And when we come back, we're going to go a little bit more into the detail of how this benefits you for the rest of the conference and the real takeaways of the bootcamp. Be right back.
In commercial real estate, success starts with the building. The best run properties deliver the best tenant experiences, boosting your NOI. Enter Prism by Building Engines, uniquely designed to help you increase NOI from a single building to thousands of commercial properties. Including core features for best-in-class operations, innovative tools to boost the tenant experience, and unique solutions you won't see from any other ops provider. The platform's open API infrastructure connects seamlessly with your in-house systems. See why the world's most successful companies have chosen Building Engines. Visit buildingengines.com to schedule a free demo and see the power of Prism today.
All right. So guys, let's talk about the process a little bit. Okay. So there's a couple organizations that come to my mind: an oil company, a media company, that are very big, notable names with big buildings and big portfolios. Let's not mention their name, just in case they don't want us to go into too much detail. But tell us a little bit about the process from the boot camp to doing an extraordinary either big building or big campus. Was it 1 year, 2 year, 3 years? How much organizational change was involved? I mean, what were the stumbling points? And think about some of the ones that moved a little quicker, and let's hone in on a case study on what it takes to go from 0 to 100 miles an hour in the shortest amount of time. Rob, why don't we start with you? Think of one
Yep.
of those those big companies we know.
Well, I would say that the journey. Let's say you're building a million square foot tower in Manhattan, just theoretically. It starts early to get the biggest impact, but I also want to point out that no matter where you are in your journey, if you have a building that is 10 years old, it is still applicable to learn what we're talking about. But the very first thing you want to get your head around, I would call the Lego blocks of a smart building approach or strategy, is what are the use cases for what that technology is going to do.
Yep.
And if you can have that conversation, not only does it clarify the outcome for all of the stakeholders, and by the way, HR is now a big time stakeholder in this conversation, and they're the third leg of a stool that used just to be one or two between facilities.
I would argue
and IT.
there's five legs, and we'll get into that in a second. Yeah, that I've discovered recently. Yep.
Yeah, there are more and more legs to this stool because it is, as you said, the built environment, and it exists for a purpose. Otherwise, we'd all meet out in the woods, and get rained on. So the you start with the use cases, and then those use cases allow you to drive in the right direction and understand some of the hurdles that are going to come along the way.
Well, and over the last 90 days or so that I've been on the calls, kind of, getting an idea of what people are thinking, is this topic of organizational alignment seems to be just jumping to the top. And we've known that this has been an issue for IT, OT, facilities, HR now, in some cases, marketing, putting digital signage in the lobby, doesn't talk to IT or facilities. You want to put in a wireless network. Well, IT usually does that, but real estate's, the one who benefits or not from that conversation. How much do you go into the organizational alignment component of an IB strategy?
Jim, it's actually the first block of almost all of our strategy engagements, because if you don't have that alignment, you're going back into the traditional way of doing things, letting your engineers decide things when you're into a redesign or repositioning or what have you, and you're basically saying, let someone else make your decisions for you. So as you mentioned, there's more and more of these teams realizing in these real estate organizations, in development teams, in property management or asset management groups, that technology is impacting their bottom line, their performance metrics, the value of the properties, the risk they're willing to accept, their insurance premiums. They're realizing technology is an enabler, and they need to be more strategic about it. And they are not always well versed in technology. So we need to, in that first step of our engagements, show them these basic principles, show them the market conditions, get them nodding, and get them telling us what their particular problem in their particular organization is, so that we can then frame up the capabilities that would make the most sense for them to dig into.
Especially in light of what's going on right now with office vacancies where they are at, devaluation of some assets. I mean, we are in for some troublesome time based on conversations I've been having. And the other discussion we're not going to have time for, but is how do I pay for all this stuff when I'm trying to keep my tenants in place and pay my bills and pay my mortgage, right? But at the end of the day, we don't get out of this from a sustainability standpoint. We don't get out of this from an occupant experience standpoint. We don't get this out of this from a building value proposition standpoint without technology and innovation. We don't. And so the faster those executives and those organizations can align from a business standpoint, I think it's going to happen much faster.
Yeah, the technology is going into these buildings, whether you're you're strategic about it or not. You're still putting in control systems. You're still putting in meters. There's things you have to do to build a modern building.
Yep.
The idea is to do this better.
Well,
to drive your
and a
outcomes.
topic we haven't even touched on, and I hope you guys at least spend a few minutes on the boot camp, is the electrification of buildings. I mean, we focus on cars, but we have a guy that will be at the conference that was so proud when he said, I replaced my diesel generator in the basement with a big old battery. Okay. And OPS, his building is low voltage, right? Which is another big topic in the industry of our conference this year.
And you bring up a great topic, Jim, because there's new buildings that are in design or going up now. And you wouldn't design a new building with a pneumatic system. Should you be designing a building with a fossil fuel burning boiler?
No, not even.
So,
but that just shows you how much work we have to do. Okay. Because these conversations are still not mainstream, but they need to be. And hopefully things like we're doing and you're doing will help get that out there. Guys, we're going to run out of time, but I would like to give you 30 seconds. You're on the 50th floor of one of those buildings, Rob, and you got a senior level real estate facilities, even asset manager. What do you tell them why they should come to this IB boot camp specifically, and then stay on board for the rest of Realcomm and IBcon? 30 seconds. What do you tell them?
Well, I think it's sort of two-sided. First of all, we're not going to say it's easy, because if it was easy, everybody would do it. On the flip side, what you learn in this boot camp is the issues that you're potentially going to tackle and how to absorb that complexity. And that is probably the biggest takeaway.
Are you gonna touch upon the topic of making critical investments in an economically challenged world? Are you guys going to cover that? Are you going to deal with the current market conditions and how do you find budgets for this stuff in times of stress?
Jim, we have to. It's the elephant in the room. They're getting squeezed on. You need to be able to report more. You need to drive down your cybersecurity risk, while at the same time, there's not as many tenants signing leases. There's not as much revenue coming in. There's more pressure. So they're getting squeezed on the cost side and on the revenue side. We have to address that as well.
And that's why we love you guys and why we hang, is because you business first, technology second. Yeah. So Andy, 15 seconds now. What would you tell somebody why they got to come?
Get in the elevator with Rob. He just did it right. That's what no,
great.
We're on the same page. This industry
Great
is
answer.
fragmented and it's noisy. So you need to be able to absorb that complexity, to use Rob's terminology there again. And that's part of our job here, is to help you do that. Put a filter over it.
And I want to go on record saying you're going to see very, very little fear of missing out. FOMO, not going to be here. And shiny objects are going to be put in their category as part of a strategy. So we push innovation, have for almost 25 years now, but we're not going to isolate, reasons to do this is because everybody else is doing it or because this thing looks cool. This is a business-driven strategic approach to making your buildings better, period. So
Absolutely.
Guys, thank you so much. I know you got a lot of work ahead of you the next few months to get this thing, but you've been doing it for 11 years now. I have 100% confidence you're going to do a phenomenal job once again. So thank you for your time and energy on this very important Intelligent Buildings Bootcamp.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks for having us, Jim.
Have a great day. Great weekend. Be well.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
All right. With that, let's bring on our favorite news guy, Howard Berger. And Howard's going to give us a little rundown on what is going on this week in the area of real estate technology, innovation, and automation. How are you, sir?
Hey, I'm good, Jim. And great show. Thanks. Thank you. And Rob, Andy, great conversation.
Yeah, those guys know what they're doing. They know what they're doing.
Yeah, I got to also thank them to all their contributions for Realcomm and IBcon in the industry. And that's over and above the boot camp. I mean, the alums just from the boot camp, they've gone on to create some of the most significant smart building portkudos and district projects
in the world. In the world.
Yeah, I mean, and that's where they, got their feet wet. So that's kudos.
All right. Well, let me get out of your way, get to the news, and I'll be back in a few.
So just a couple of stories from our weekly news briefing. It goes out every Thursday morning. And if you don't see it in your inbox, just go to realcomm.com and click on news and you can subscribe there. So today's lead story, it's our Realcomm Digi Awards celebrating 25 years real estate technologies innovators. So the Digi Awards were born back in 1999 when there were only a few companies in our industry focused on technology. And we started giving awards in 4 basic categories. 1, real estate companies, for how they promoted innovation in their own operations. Number 2, smart building projects. 3, emerging technology products. And finally, to people, to those special individuals who devoted their careers to real estate technology. And and really push the envelope for industry change. And we give our Julie Devine Digital Impact Reward. Originally, it was the Digital Impact Reward, but we renamed it in honor of Julie, one of our Realcomm partners, who unexpectedly passed away in 2016. Then in 2018, our 20th anniversary, we added the Lifetime Achievement, which we presented to 20 of the industry's most impactful leaders for their 20 plus years of dedicated service in the industry. And we added that list every year. And in this article, we offer a unique retrospective of all the winners in each category from the past 25 years. So whether you're new to the industry or a veteran, I think you'll enjoy the read. So this week, we're highlighting one of our smart building best practice showcase projects. It's called River South. Possibly the smartest building in Texas with a menu of digital amenities you just won't find in any other building. So it's developed by QuadReal and StreamReal. That's end-to-end connectivity, integrated data-driven operating platform, digital customer and workplace apps. But some unique attributes are the converged passive optical building network, a full building DAS, single pane of glass operating system, individually metered tenant space. You just don't hear that. Robust tenant experience app with integrations into amenities, building systems, or real-time data streams. And there's more. Those services can extend into the workplace, offering a full suite of IoT device and management tools to bridge the gap between landlord and tenant. River South, iconic project. Check it out. Next, an article, Point Counterpoint. Should garages be the gas station? Should parking garages be the future gas stations for electric vehicles? So battery-powered EVs were only 1.5% of the U.S. market in 2020, but the number of new EV registrations more than doubled in the first half of 2021, an increase of like 118% in 6 months. But could this disruption actually turn out to be new revenue streams for parking lots? As it turns out, there could be an opportunity for your parking facilities to actually establish themselves as the go-to spot for EV charging instead of gas stations, depending on location. So of course it's helpful. If your parking facilities are adjacent to commerce, clusters of activity where customers can grab a coffee or do some shopping for the 20 minutes or so it takes to grab a quick charge, good read and some food for thought. Finally, more AI chatbot use cases. And here's another one for you. So commercial real estate's really waking up to the fact that AI and ChatGPT reporting abilities can provide business value. Data, in one example, data analysis is critical to business, but the actual data crunching processes can be, crazy, out of reach to most small businesses like restaurants. So small and medium-sized restaurants, not the large chains, usually rely on gut instincts and experience rather than data. And that works a lot of the time, but sometimes it's limited and there can be numerous missed opportunities for improvement. So they're finding that pairing Microsoft's flagship tool, ChatGPT, with something called ClearCog's predictive forecasting is helping solve that problem. With just a simple text-based query, restaurant operators can get real-time answers to things like, what's my top selling item this week? I only have 20 pounds of chicken in inventory. What's the chance I'm going to run out today? And every day, new applications are being exposed for these AI chatbots. So this is a great space, and we'll keep reporting on this. So that was it for me. Have a great weekend, and back to you, Jim.
All right. So Howard, just an incredible update on the news as always. And the one that caught my eye was that the ChatGPT, and there's a lot of hype out there now on it, but there's actually some reality. We're going to spend the next 90 days just grinding through, all the noise and find out those relevant, legitimate case studies as it relates to, and not just ChatGPT, but AI in general. We introduced that 5-6 years ago, and we're finally seeing some real life applications coming out, and it's going to get real interesting. It's going to get real interesting real quick.
They're figuring out how to apply it to really make a difference. Yeah.
Big topic at the conference. So thank you for your great insight as always, and you have a great weekend.
Thanks.
All right. Before we get to next week's really exciting conversation for a number of reasons, let's hear from our final sponsor, and I will be right back in a little bit, and we'll wrap this and tell you a little bit about next week. All right, as always, big thank yous, speakers, Rob and Andy, really seasoned professionals, been around the block, know what they're talking about, never rest on their laurels, and really just keep pushing the envelope, but put it in such a way that the beginner can understand it. So thank you to those guys, not for just today's episode, but for the work you're going to do for the boot camp coming up at the conference. Thank you to our sponsors, and as always, thank you to the Realcomm team behind the scenes for putting together this episode. So next week, near and dear to my heart, probably 15 years ago, we recognized that there was going to be an issue someday, today, that because of the dwindling math and science scores in the United States, that we are going to run out of smart people. That, in addition to a big number of folks leaving the workforce for whatever reason, we now find ourselves in an interesting place of needing to get more skilled individuals into these buildings to run these more sophisticated systems. And so, where do you get those people? I mean, if we're not getting these graduates out of college that have the skills or the desire to be in here. So we started raising money for math and science. We had poker tournaments way back when. I think our best year was $100,000. We handed a check to Jim Whalen, and we were in Boston that year, and he gave it to his math and science charity in the city. Trying to just encourage or make people aware how critical that was. Well, I can't say we did too good of a job over the last 15 years in our educational system. Our math and science skills are still dropping, and if it doesn't get fixed, it's going to cause a big problem. I would suspect it already has. But we next week we have got two guys that are going to just give you faith in hard work and smart ideas. John Spooner and Mike Conway, both of an organization called Stack and Jewels, are going to tell you how they're going into challenged neighborhoods, economically challenged neighborhoods, finding kids with desire, no skills, no high education, but with some desire, and they're putting them in front of a smart building automation program. And the results are just going to make you cry. These guys are doing such great work. And I think we may even have one of their students on to tell a little bit about the journey. So whenever there's a problem, there's always an opportunity. And it takes guys like this. God bless them. They are doing such great work. And I can't wait to have that conversation with them next week. So with that, everybody have a great day, great weekend. Be well. And we will see you next Friday. Take care.